This is an introduction to statistics. It won't be that bad, I promise. Okay, let's talk about statistics and evaluation. I know at this point the biggest question that everyone has is, why do we have to learn statistics? And the reason that I want you to learn some statistics is because you need to be able to make sense of your data. Evaluation is all about gathering information, gathering data, but once you've gathered it, you're just left with a big old pile of data. You have to do something with it. So that's why we're talking about statistics. Now, I think most people fall someplace on a continuum that has on one end, I hate statistics, and probably moves on to I hate math, and then maybe, okay, I don't hate statistics, but I'm really going to never take a statistics class as long as I don't have to I guess statistics aren't that bad, to hey, statistics are pretty cool, to statistics are amazing. And I will tell you that I probably started a little more on the left side. I was never really mathy. I didn't take any statistics classes in high school. And now I believe statistics are amazing. I know enough about statistics to be dangerous. And what I've discovered is that through statistics, I'm able to very easily find out interesting things about my data. Now, many of the most powerful, most amazing statistics are pretty sophisticated and are way beyond what we're going to talk about here. So here's what my goal is. My goal is to move you from where I think most of you are, which is I hate statistics and I hate math, to someplace a little further onto the right side of this continuum, so that you don't hate statistics, so that you start to appreciate that actually these are things that are going to help you interpret your data and understand what the data says and what the data means. So let's talk about what we are not going to do in terms of learning about statistics and what we are going to do. So one thing that we're not going to do is to get into the nitty-gritty detail of statistics. Statistics is obviously a very rich and complex field of study. There's a lot to learn about statistics, and that's not what we're doing. What we're going to do is get just the most basic introduction to statistics, to just learn those few basic concepts and those few basic tools that are going to help you really understand your evaluation data. Just as a sidebar, those of you who are grad students, you know that you've got a research class coming up, and you know you're going to have to learn something about statistics in order to get your thesis or your field research project done. So this is also a way for you to just get a little heads up, a little start on that. All right, another thing that we're not going to do is we're not going to figure out how to do statistical calculations by hand. That's stupid. There's no reason for us to learn all these formulas and to do these calculations by hand because we have tools that can do it for us. So what we're going to focus on is how do we use the tools to get the answer, and then more importantly, once we have the answer, how do we share that, communicate that information in a way that helps people understand what the data is saying and what the data means. So we're going to just use Excel to do our calculations to find out what the data says and what the data means. There are, of course, many very useful, very powerful, very helpful statistical software packages. We're not doing anything sophisticated. We're doing some pretty basic stuff. In fact, Excel can do a lot more than what we're doing. So part of the reason that I want us to stick with Excel is because I know most people have Excel, and if you don't have Excel, you have access to other free spreadsheets on the web, like the Google spreadsheet or other kinds of spreadsheets. All right, another thing that we are clearly not going to be doing is turning you into a statistician or an expert on statistics. We really are just going to give you enough information so that you can use statistics to make sense of what your evaluation data says so that you can interpret what your evaluation data means. We are just learning the teeny tiniest tip of the iceberg. We're not even the tip of the iceberg. We're that little penguin sitting on the tip of the iceberg. We're the beak of the penguin sitting on the tip of the iceberg. We're really just going to learn a little bit. But my prediction is that most of you, by the time we're done, are going to say, hey, statistics aren't that bad. In my family, we bet each other all the time, and our betting limit is 5 cents. So I am willing to bet each and every one of you a nickel that at the end of this, you're going to say, okay, statistics aren't that bad. Or maybe you'll even go further along that continuum and say statistics are pretty darn amazing. So here's what we're going to cover this week. We're going to be talking about numbers and things that kind of look like numbers but aren't really numbers. So for now, we'll just call them all variables. We're also going to talk about two different types of statistics. There are descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Now, descriptive statistics, just as the name sounds, these are statistics we use in order to describe our data. So we use descriptive statistics to organize and to describe our data. And here's the things we're going to be learning about descriptive statistics. We're going to be figuring out how many of things exist in our data. We're going to count things in our data. In statistics, we refer to that as frequency. We're also going to find out about middle of our data. So we're going to find out average, that's an example of middle. We're going to find out the physical middle of the data. We're going to find out the most common answer, because that's kind of a middle. So we're going to talk a lot about looking at sort of the middle, the most common place of our data. And we refer to that in statistics as measures of central tendency. And then we're also going to find out how much the data varies. So we're going to look at range, which is, the range of answers from the minimum answer to the maximum answer that people gave. And we're also going to talk about standard deviation. Now, I know some of you, whether you've had a statistics class or not, standard deviation may have left a bad taste in your mouth, but I guarantee you, practically guarantee you, that when you finish listening to my explanation of standard deviation, you're going to get it. You're going to get it at least at the level that we need to get it, at kind of that basic level. So those are descriptive statistics. Descriptive statistics are 99.9% of what we will use when we analyze our data. Mostly we will be using descriptive statistics to analyze and interpret our evaluation data. But there's also something called inferential statistics. Now, inferential statistics is where you infer, right? That's inferential. That's where that name comes from. So with inferential statistics, you gather data from a small group and then you analyze it and you make inferences or predictions to the larger group. So we take a sample, right? All a sample is a small subset of a larger population or a larger group. And the reason that we do that is because very often when we're doing research and other things, it's not practical to talk to 100% of the people in the group. If I was doing a research project, for example, on the students at ISU, it's not reasonable for me to talk to 15,000 students. So what I would do is I would take a sample, I would take a subset and maybe talk to 200 students. And then once I systematically analyzed that data on those 200 students, I could, through inferential statistics, make inferences or make predictions to that broader population. We're not going to be using inferential statistics very much at all in evaluation, and the reason for that is it is reasonable for us to talk to 100% of our population, right? When you think about evaluation, we're evaluating people we had in class. So it's the 20 or the 50 or the 100 people that we had in class. It's perfectly reasonable for us to gather data from 100% of those people. So we don't need to make inferences from a small group to that total population, from that sample to the population, which is the main reason that we're not using many inferential statistics, because we don't need to infer. We can just gather the data and find out. Now, we are going to, though, look at one thing from inferential statistics. We're going to look at correlation. And correlation is where you find out what is the relationship between two variables. So in our case for evaluation, very often it's between two questions. Is there a relationship between the answers that students gave to two questions? And I like looking at correlation because it's fun. That's the main reason I like looking at correlation. It's the first time that you start to realize that statistics might kind of be magic in terms of their ability to help you uncover information that exists in your data that you really just can't see with your naked eye. Obviously, it's also helpful information. We're not doing it just because I think it's fun and magical, but we also can get useful information out of it. So that's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about numbers and things that look like numbers. We're going to learn about descriptive statistics, and we're also going to just dip our toe into inferential statistics to talk about correlation. And that's what we're going to be covering this week.